Hello and welcome to The Excerpt. I'm Dana Taylor. If you haven't heard of The Onion, a satirical news publication, you've no doubt come across the many memes and parodies inspired by its style. The Onion began with a group of scrappy Gen-Xers who wanted to poke fun at mainstream news. It's evolved into an at times biting, oftentimes comic, cultural critic. What role does humor play in making the world make sense? I'm joined now by Christine Wenc, a member of The Onion's original staff and author of the new book, Funny Because It's True, How the Onion Created Modern American News Satire, which is available now. Thanks for joining me, Christine.
Thanks for having me, Dana. This is great.
In your book, you talk about good fake news versus bad fake news. How has The Onion walked the line between satire and misinformation?
That is a good question. The Onion's mission is to try to make the world a better place with its satire, and the point of satire is to kind of point out what the writers think is wrong and needs to be changed. And there's a lot of thought that the Onion writers put into, what they decide to target as their satire. So I think that's definitely part of it.
Satire is, of course, a powerful tool to hold those in positions of authority accountable. One of The Onion's most famous headlines is one that's often seen after a mass shooting in America. And it says, "No way to prevent this," says, "only nation where this regularly happens." Do you think The Onion has successfully influenced public opinion with its brand of satire?
I would like to think that it has. I mean, the popularity of The Onion, what I would hope is some evidence of that. I mean, it was amazing to me that after nearly 40 years, The Onion is still popular. They were the first entity, I think, to reach 1 million followers on Blue Sky. And that headline in particular, I think, has made a big impact. It's been reported in the media multiple times. Even in the course of me writing the book, I had to update the number of times that it's been reprinted. I think right now it's at about 37 or 38. And, it just points out the kind of ineffectualness of the public response to, this serious societal problem, and pointing out that we are the only country in which this is a continuing issue. So if they're raising, awareness of that, I think that's a really good thing.
And then looking back at the ethical standards for The Onion when they're riffing on sensitive topics back in your day when you were there, the way you view it today, what are those standards?
Well, you mean you'd have to talk to them now. But I think the Onion, I mean, they have stepped over the line a few times. I think that's true. But I do think that they're on the side of area men and area women. They're on the side of the people who are affected by the decisions made by people in power. And I think that as long as they're focused on that as the place where they're coming from and where their proper target should be, I think that gives them a decent ethical standing in most cases, I think.
Christine, I'm sure you know that there is a popular subreddit. It's called Not the Onion, and they highlight real stories and headlines that something could have been written by The Onion. The Onion was originally circulated in print. Do you think it would have become as well known as it is if it had been launched during the age of social media? And I think you've answered this, but do you
Yeah.
think that it still cuts through the noise?
Yeah, I mean, I think but people have asked me, if the Onion could be, become what it was. And I think that the competition now is so intense. There's just so much more than there was in the 80s and 90s even. So yeah, breaking through all of that, I think is really difficult. So yeah, when they started as paper, they got a really strong local following, and then they were kind of people were subscribing to the Onion from all across the country. And then when they went online in '96, that's what really made them take off. So there was like almost an irony in the history of the Onion because the internet is what made them famous, but the internet is also sort of what caused a lot of traditional media, including, the Onion in a way, a lot of problems later on down the line.
In 2001, a few weeks after 9/11, The Onion published an issue with a satirical take on the tragedy. There was an article titled, quote, "Not knowing what else to do, woman bakes American flag cake," unquote. The reception was mixed. What was your take on that publication? And what kinds of things were you hearing at the time about that?
Well, my understanding is that the reception of that issue was extremely positive. They received thousands and thousands of emails and faxes. That's when people sent faxes, praising the issue and telling the Onion that it really helped a lot of people laugh for the first time because it came out just 2 weeks after the attack. So I know the comedy community also held them in extremely high regard after that issue came out.
Satire can make us think, it can also make us laugh. Do you have a favorite Onion story or headline?
Oh, there's so many. There's been thousands and thousands of headlines. I have a penchant for the sort of the science and the kind of silly ones. One I always liked is archaeological dig uncovers ancient race of skeleton people, which you have to sort of think about it for a minute. There's a lot of good archaeology ones, but there are many funny and interesting and actually kind of sometimes sort of complicated and sad stories about people finding Onion articles to be true, thinking that it was real, which often happens when stories are kind of taken out of their context and seen in a different way. In the new context, sometimes it's hard to tell whether things are real or not. And I think many people have been fooled by the Onion for sure.
You were there at the beginning. Can you describe the energy and some of the minds that created The Onion, who you've said are the creators of modern American news satire?
I was there early on when the staff was a bunch of 18 to 20-year-old undergraduate students, working out of a dumpy student apartment on campus. A lot of the paper was basically made up at, 2 o'clock in the morning before it had to go to the printer a few hours later. But there was a lot of, being in a creative environment with a bunch of young people was very fun. There's all kinds of crazy, silly things happening all the time. I was gone by about the early 90s, but the 1990s staff, that was the group that really took the Onion to the next level. I think they're the ones that made the Onion into a parody of USA Today, as people thought about it at the time. The newspaper, that is. They also, a number of them became committed to satirizing from probably a progressive point of view, I would say. That became really important. That's when they also started really adhering to AP style. And they were the people that really created the Onion's sort of mature voice, if you could call it mature, in that period of time. So that was an amazing group of people. And a lot of those people are pictured on the front of the book, actually.
So I'm not gonna let this go. I was surprised to learn that USA Today is actually part of the genesis story of The Onion. You wrote about one of its co-founders, Tim Keck,
Yeah.
growing up in rural Wisconsin where there were only 2 newspapers available. One of them was USA Today, the other was the Oshkosh Northwestern, and he had very unflattering things to say about both of them. As
Yeah.
I mentioned, you were there at the beginning, part of the original staff from 1988, about 1990. Fast forward to this moment, you're discussing The Onion and your book with USA Today. Is this a strange full circle moment for you? I mean, The Onion is now a massive media brand itself.
Mhm. Yeah, that was very. I definitely laughed when I saw that I'd been. Oh wow, it's USA Today. Do they know about the whole thing? Yeah, no, it's been so interesting to see how because the part of what I did with the book is tell the story of media and the news since the 80s as well as the history of the Onion, because the Onion has been satirizing and making fun of flaws and omissions, I would say, in mainstream media, since that time in a lot of different ways. And at the same time, the Onion has become very popular. So in a way, the Onion is kind of mainstream now. I mean, many people from the Onion have gone on to write for, the people from the Onion were instrumental in creating the Daily Show and the Colbert Report, and all the late night shows now have had Onion people working for them. The Onion has kind of spread its influence very broadly, but all kind of under the radar, and it's interesting because I also know that journalists love the Onion. They say the Onion says things that we wish we could say and we can't say. And so I find that really interesting too. So I think the Onion is aware that journalists actually love them, even though they're often making fun of what journalists do.
Your book is rich with all of these characters. Why did you want to write this book? I know you did extensive research for it.
Yeah, I mean, I started this book way back in 2018, right before the pandemic, and I just moved back to Madison from the East Coast, where I'd been for about 25 years. And this was during the first kind of just big discussion about fake news, like the bad fake news. So everybody was thinking about that and talking about that a lot. I was going back to my college town, so naturally I started thinking about the stuff I did back in college, and then I also started wondering, I wonder what the Onion people think about all of this and the way the discourse has changed and the way that news has changed. So all of that really made me want to write the book, as well as learning for myself more about the history of news and journalism since that time. So yeah, I did many, many, many interviews, talked to tons of people, and they were just, as you can see, you mentioned, there's so many characters, there's so many just smart, funny, and interesting, and just weirdos, that have been through the Onion, and it was very, very fun to meet a lot of those folks and talk to them. It was great.
Well, it's very interesting to read this book, and I'll just say I enjoyed the USA Today shout out. It made me laugh. The book is called Funny Because It's True. It's on bookshelves now. Thank you so much for being on the Excerpt, Christine.
Thank you for having me, Dana.
Thanks for watching. I'm Dana Taylor. I'll see you next time.